Here is a Hyundai Sonata. Before we get started though, let me give a quick shout out to Naya Motors Inc. for letting us use the car today to film the videos. They are a used car dealer here in Ottawa, Canada. Check out the link in description for their entire inventory. Now let's go ahead and open up the driver's side door. Now right over there at the bottom left, you'll find the primary hood release lever. Pull it lightly. Now in front of the vehicle, right on top of the Hyundai emblem there, right on that left edge, put one finger in there and then lift up the hood with the other hand. Now this hood is supported by the two hood struts, one and the second one over there. So we'll talk about all the different fluids, the windshield washer fluid, engine oil, the coolant, the transmission fluid and the brake fluid, and also the lack of power steering fluid. Let's just start with the brake fluid right there. That's the reservoir for it. To get an idea of the reading, look at it from this side. There are two markings on it, max and min. The fluid level should be between the two markings. If you can't see it clearly, just try wiggling the container and you'll see the fluid inside slosh. You do not have to open the cap for this.
Now the way the brake system works is you got three main components to it. You got the brake pedal, you got the brake fluid, and then you got the actual brakes. The only thing that connects your brake pedal to the brakes is the brake fluid. So obviously it's very important. Now if you want to make sure that it's in good condition and that there is enough of brake fluid. The problem with brake fluid is that it's hygroscopic, meaning it just loves moisture. The moment you expose brake fluid to the atmosphere, it's just going to absorb all the moisture out of the air. And that's the problem, because you do not want brake fluid and moisture to be mixed together, because that makes it unpredictable. And when that does happen, your brake pedal now starts feeling spongy and mushy, and the car takes longer distances to stop, so that's not good. If it does happen that you left the cap off for more than 15-20 minutes, what I strongly suggest you do is you take your car to a mechanic. They have a device that can measure the moisture content in the brake fluid, and they can tell you if you're okay or if you need to get your brake fluid flushed out. And if you do need to get it flushed out, that's one place you do not want to cheap out on, so definitely just get it done if you have to get it done. It is what it is. The brake system is sealed off, right? So it doesn't really consume brake fluid on a daily basis. So it's not like you have to top it off every now and then. The reason why you may notice a change in the brake fluid level though is that one, either there's a leak in your system which is serious and you definitely want to get that checked out, or two, your brake pads are worn down. So what happens is when you get new brake pads, they're thick. Over time though, they get worn down and they get thinner. And now in order to compensate for the thinner pads, the worn down pads, the brake system takes some of the fluid out of the reservoir and into the actual brake lines. So that may cause the level to go down in the reservoir. Alright, so those are the two reasons, and if you do have to top it off, I'll show you how to do it.
Now it says it right there on the cap that we need .3 or 4 brake fluid from a sealed container. That's what it should say on the container as well, .3 or 4. The way to fill it up is just twist this cap open. That's where the fluid goes in. Put the cap back on, make sure it's sitting on properly, and then twist it right like quarter of a turn and it's locked in place. That's it. When that right there is where the windshield washer fluid goes, flip that cap open. That's where the fluid goes. Now if you want, you could put water in there if you'd like, but I would suggest putting windshield washer fluid even in the summer because it has detergents that just helps clean it better. In the winter though, if you live in a place where the temperature goes below freezing, do not put water, because as water freezes and becomes ice, it's going to expand and cause all sorts of problems. So put the proper type of windshield washer fluid depending on the weather conditions. Like this one is summer fluids, good up to 0 degrees Celsius. And this is the proper windshield washer fluid. It's good up to minus 45 degrees Celsius. That's very good. And remember that there's chemicals in there, so do not let children near it. Read all the warning labels, and that's also the reason why these bottles tend to have a safety cap on them. You can't just twist it open. You either have to push it down and then twist it left, or like this, squeeze it from the sides and then twist it left. And if your bottle has a safety seal on it, just take that seal off completely to avoid any spillage when you're filling up the fluid. Hold the bottle the way I'm holding. One hand on the top, one on the bottom. The bottom hand, that's the one you'll use to control the fluid flow. So that way there's less spillage. Start filling this up, and if you run out of one type of bottle, like one type of fluid, it's okay to mix and match, especially in the summer. In the winter though, just make sure you match winter fluid with winter fluid. Start filling this up, and you just have to fill it up all the way to the top. There's no real gauge. You just keep an eye out on it, and as it rises to the top, just stop. Once you're done, put the lid back on and press it down to secure it. Put the cap back on the bottle, and that is pretty much it.
Now what happens is when the engine is running, it just produces heat, right? It's burning fuel, so it gets hot. Now you want the engine to be warm, but you don't want it to overheat, because if it overheats, then it just causes all sorts of problems, so you don't want any of that to happen. Now that's where the coolant comes in, because what the coolant does is the coolant circulates within the engine, it collects all the heat, and now the hot coolant, it goes to the radiator, it cools off and comes back in, collects more heat, goes back to the radiator, cools off, comes back in. The cycle keeps on repeating again and again. However, in this whole system, what you need is an expansion tank, because the coolant itself, as it heats up, it's going to expand. And as the name suggests, you need an expansion tank where the extra coolant can sort of just go temporarily and then it can come back to the main cooling system. And that's what you need an expansion tank for.
So that is a radiator pressure cap. There's even a sticker on it that says never open it when it's hot, because it's pressurized hot coolant underneath it. So if you open it when it's hot, it's going to splash out and cause serious injuries. Instead, what we'll do is we'll use the cap, the line over there beside it, and use that to locate the expansion tank. There's even a cap on it that says engine coolant. And there are two markings on it, F and L, full and low. The fluid level should be between F and L. And always check when the engine is cold, because when the engine warms up, extra coolant from the radiator is going to go in the expansion tank, and that will mess up your reading. If you do have to fill up coolant, you can use this pressed on, all makes and models top up, ready to use coolant. You do not have to add any distilled water to it, it's ready to use the way it is. Just twist that cap left and it comes off. That's where the coolant goes in. Put the cap back on, twist it right to lock it in place, and you are done.
Now, the engine oil is the most important fluid in your car. Without engine oil, your engine's gone. It's seized up. All right, and that's a major problem. So the easiest thing you can do to make sure your engine lasts a long time is to make sure that it has proper engine oil in it, the proper quantity and the proper type of engine oil in it at all times. All right? So you definitely want to check your engine oil at least once a month. Don't wait for that warning indicator light to come on your dash. By the time it comes on, it's too late. And if you're in the middle of nowhere, you may not even have a way to go get new engine oil and top it off. So just check your engine oil level once a month at least. Now, the reason why the engine oil is so important is because if you open up that engine, you will find there's hundreds of small pieces which are so close together, working at high speeds, under high temperature, and they just keep on going on for such a long time. And the only thing that prevents the metal parts from rubbing against each other is the engine oil. All right? So that's the one thing you definitely want to make sure you are in good shape.
Well, make sure the engine is warm when you check the oil, because as engine oil heats up, it expands, and that's going to affect the reading on the oil dipstick. Also, be sure that the car is on a level flat ground when you check the oil, not on a sloped driveway, because that will also affect the oil dipstick level. Now that is the oil dipstick, and that's the oil fill cap. But before we fill the oil, we need to know what the current level is, right? So first, let's check the oil level. You will need a piece of rag for this. So let's go ahead and pull the dipstick out straight. What we'll do is we'll wipe the oil off the dipstick, then we'll put it back in again, and then pull it out and get a fresh reading. But before that, let's take a closer look at the dipstick. There are two markings, maximum and minimum. Oil level should be between maximum and minimum. If it's below L, that means there's not enough oil, and that's not good. And if it's above F, that means there's too much oil, and even that is not a good thing, because that leads to excessive oil pressure that eventually leads to oil leaks. Let's put the dipstick back in all the way, wait for a second, pull it out, and get a fresh reading. In this case, the oil level is right at F. So that's good. We don't have to add any oil, we don't have to take out any oil. And just for reference, it takes about 1 quart, about 1 liter of oil for the level to go from L to F. Let's just wipe the oil off the dipstick, put it back in all the way, and secure it in place. Now if you do have to add oil, just be careful. Just add a little bit oil, check the dipstick, add a little bit more, and then check it, and so on and so forth. So that way you don't end up overfilling the engine with too much oil. And the oil type is right there on the fill cap, 5W20. That's what we need to get, 5W20. Now if you cannot find 5W, you can put 0W. That's okay, but the 20 part, that should be matching. Let's go ahead and twist this open. Sometimes it just may be stuck and you may have to use both your hands to loosen that oil fill cap. Just twist it left, that's where the oil goes in. When you're done, put the cap back on and twist it right till you hear that one click. Yep, that's good. Let's do this again. Loosen it, twist it right, click, and that's about it.
Now the transmission fluid. I'm sure you're probably wondering where the transmission fluid dipstick is. It's not like the older cars. This car, this transmission is sealed for life. So there's no dipstick for us to just go and pull it out and check the quality and the level of transmission fluid. But in reality, it's more like sealed till the warranty lasts. It's not really sealed for life for as long as you're going to keep the car. So if you're going to keep the car for a long time, what I suggest you do is every 100,000 miles or 160,000 kilometers, you can flush the fluid. There is a drain plug and there is a way to fill up the fluid. There's just no dipstick. That's about the only thing. But if you really want to just flush the fluid, you can do it. So every 100,000 miles or 160,000 kilometers, just get the transmission fluid flushed and you should be all set. Now, power steering fluid. There is no power steering fluid in this car because this is not a hydraulic based. The older cars used to have a hydraulic power steering system, and hydraulic systems had fluid in it, so there was a way for you to check the fluid and make sure it was topped off, good condition, all of that. But this car has electric power steering. So the way the power steering works is there's a motor that actually helps you turn the steering. So if anyone tells you you need to get your power steering fluid flushed, there is no power steering fluid in this car. It's funny, and the reason why I even mention is because in one of my previous videos for our 2017-2018 Hyundai Elantra, which again also has electric power steering, someone mentioned that they took the car to a dealership and the dealership technician suggested that they should get a power steering fluid flush, which had made no sense to me whatsoever. And I mean, just doesn't make any sense because there is no fluid to begin with. I mean, there's no point of having fluid in it. So if you're wondering where the power steering fluid is, there is none in this car, and that's one less thing to check and worry about. And that's pretty much it.
In order to close the hood, just grab the hood, lower it, and then slam it shut. Hope you found it useful.